But over the years since that was before that was like when they first came out, my first one. And then as I got to kind of actually be a parent, I learned that both of those things were not really the approach to take. Neither being their best friend or, just being the enabler of everything, nor the hardcore drill instructor. I learned that earning my children's trust, that was what, and I have a 20-year-old now, and my other ones are going to be 11, but my wife taught me this because she also is a teacher. She's been a child development since I met her. And she said that, no, the best way to avoid all that teenage, all the stuff you see our friends running into and our family members with their teenagers, is you notice a lot of those people, they take their kids on really fantastic vacations and they go to the movies, they go to restaurants, they take these cool trips. But she said, and their kids treat them like shit. They have no respect for them. Nothing's good enough, no matter how nice the restaurant, no matter how fancy the car, the clothes. They're all spoiled, and they're just, and they don't respect their parents. And she says, she said, I always used to wonder, what is the difference? Why? It seemed like if you just give them stuff and have a lot of fun with them, because everyone says you should spend time with your kids. And so the assumption is that time should be recreation and good times. But my wife, she taught me that the way that you really show that your children, that you're there for them and that you earn their trust as well as their respect, is when you struggle with them. And she said that, because I was like the good time dad. It was like, even to the point like, oh, let's not do chores. I used to tell him, sweetie, why don't you and I, we can mop the floors later. Let's take the kids out. She says, that we are all going to mop the floors together. And you see my kids rolling their eyes, but also when it came time for them, when they're struggling with homework, that's when they're going through their struggles. And she taught me when my daughter was young. She said, I remember my daughter was a little baby in diapers and she was coloring something. Like, they hold things like this. And it just seemed like she was coloring. And then next thing I see, just out of the corner of my eyes, I didn't realize that she stopped. And then she just throws the crayon, goes, she grabs the paper and goes, no. I'm like, whoa, what just happened here? And it turns out when I uncrumpled her paper, she's trying to color an elephant, a big bubbly elephant. And there was a lot of crayon that was going outside the lines. And I noticed that the crayon's getting harder as she's getting more frustrated that she can't get it in the lines. And back in my day, when I was like, that is exactly the same thing I used to do when I was that age. I'd get frustrated. And I told my wife, I have a term, it's called breaking my toys. I would literally break my toys and I'd get so and then I'd get punished. I grew up in the 70s. So you do that kind of stuff, you beat your ass. I'm not going to find out what's wrong with this little, but I said, no, I'm not doing that, because I remember how that made me feel, and it turned me into a really messed up kid. So I sat down and I said, hey, sweetie pie, come here, let's open this up. Do you want to color the elephant? No. I'm like, well, hold on. Anyway, long story short, I told her, you see how the elephant has a big bubble? Can you draw a line that goes on the inside of the bubble? And she goes, yeah, right. Okay, now next to that line on the inside of the line, can you draw another line? Yeah, okay. And can you draw another line? Okay, now so she started to outline. So from the inside, she started outlining the elephant with layers and another layer of crayon, another layer. So pretty much on the inside, there was just a little space in the middle. I said, now, ready? Here's the fun part. Go like this on the white part. And she went, and it's all this. But even if she's going all sketchy, it never went outside the lines, because we called it trace work. We're just going to trace the inside, and she was so happy from that. And but you see, if we don't catch those things when they're young, when they first start expressing frustration, we just go, oh, they're just having a bad day, and we just put them somewhere else. That's a huge mistake, man. But if you sit down and even if you don't have the time, you make the time and go, screw dinner, let that shit burn, and you sit down and those little, when they first start learning about failure, like that's their first experience with failure, they can either learn I'm a failure, or, oh, every time this happens, if I, at least right now, mommy and daddy, they can show me, not do it for me, but show me there's a way out. And if every time they know that some shit happens, there's a way out, and you do that with it, then later on, they know how to kind of put that trust in you to help them, and then the trust in themselves that they develop after they've, okay, well, this is the way mom and dad thinks of this. Let's break this problem down.